It is my honor to welcome you to the 20th Wallenberg Day in Vancouver as we honor the courageous rescue work of Corey Levine. This event is put on by the Wallenberg Sugihara Civil Courage Society, also known as the Civil Courage Society in honor of Wallenberg and Sugihara. My name is Nordin, and I will mention briefly about the two courageous individuals for whom our society is named. The Swedish diplomat Raoul Wallenberg was stationed in Budapest towards the end of the World War II, and from there he rescued tens of thousands of Jews from deportation and certain death in the concentration camps. He was made, I have to read this, honorary citizen of Canada in 1985. And in 2000, the Canadian government proclaimed, quote, "Throughout Canada in each and every year, the 17th day of January shall be known under the name of Raoul Wallenberg Day." Chiune Sugihara. But before I go to him, I think I shall tell you what happened to Raoul. He did his work at great risk to himself, and he disappeared on January 17, 1945, into Soviet captivity, never to be seen again. Chiune Sugihara was a Japanese diplomat who served as vice consul in Lithuania during World War II. He chose to act at clear professional and personal risk to himself and his family, issuing transit visas without the approval of the Japanese government to allow thousands of Jews to escape certain death. Both Wallenberg and Sugihara have been designated by Israel as righteous among the nations. Our society recognizes and honors individuals with a British Columbia connection who risk their personal well-being to help others. We define civil courage as an action which entails personal risk or sacrifice intended to improve or save the lives of others who suffer from violence, conflict, or injustice. Wrongs that may stem from any social context, ranging from nations to peer groups. Our society has three main goals: to honor the legacy of Raoul Wallenberg and Chiune Sugihara, and to recognize people who have acted with similar civil courage, and thirdly, to encourage acts of civil courage in our midst. I would now like to thank briefly all the volunteers and sponsors of today's event, which you will see listed in the back of the program. Also, as I'm the treasurer of this society, I have to mention that without your support, by donations, we could not do all this good work. So I would gently remind you that at the end, at the reception, the donation table will be moved to the reception area. And also there is a donation button on our website. Now, I would like to call Karen Coulter, are you here? We have a program here. A person from the mayor's office, the deputy, she could not come. So our member, Karen Coulter, will read the City of Vancouver proclamation.
I'll do my best. Sarah Kirby Young, quotation for you. Proclamation, Raoul Wallenberg Day. Whereas Raoul Wallenberg was a Swedish diplomat and hero who saved the lives of thousands of people condemned to certain death by the Nazis during World War II. And whereas Raoul Wallenberg was taken into protective custody by the Soviet Union on January 17, 1945 in Hungary, never to be heard of again. And whereas the Vancouver Swedish and Jewish communities have paid tribute to Raoul Wallenberg with the plaque in Queen Elizabeth Park and annual events to commemorate the life and deeds of this outstanding honorary citizen of Canada. And whereas women in Afghanistan, especially those who have worked in the public sphere, now face escalating oppression from the Taliban government. And whereas this year we recognize Corey Levine, who has worked courageously in Afghanistan and Pakistan, helping women to serve as members of Afghanistan's parliament to escape to safety. I, Ken Sim, Mayor of the City of Vancouver, on behalf of the City of Vancouver Council, do hereby proclaim January 19th, 2025 as Raoul Wallenberg Day. Signed by the Mayor, Ken Sim.
We didn't know about this rescue story until seeing it on CBC News last October. To quote from the article, and there are many such others listed on our website, this is the quote, one excerpt. They left our country for the last time in the dark of the early morning. Women and children crammed into a van, heads covered and their faces masked so they didn't attract attention at Taliban checkpoints. As former female politicians in Afghanistan, the women in the vehicle faced an extraordinary threat from within their own country. Now, Corey Levine was in the vehicle with these women and their families. Since 2002, Corey, a human rights and peace-building consultant, has worked in war zones and been engaged with Afghanistan. Now she had seen the problem that Canadian government authorities had failed to grasp: how to get these women and their families out of the country to safety. So she got to work in a very much hands-on manner, including revisiting the country by now under the Taliban government. Corey, working with a group of 6 Canadian MPs of all parties, facilitated and expedited numerous such rescues to Canada. We recognize it took a lot of courage to go to this potentially dangerous location and help people there. Her actions struck us very clearly as civil courage. So, Corey, we are very honored today to present the 2025 Wallenberg Sugihara Civil Courage Award to you. So,
so much. Before I start with my thank yous and with my talk, I would just like to say that my comfort zone is always behind the scenes. Rather than in front of an audience, which I find myself here today. So please bear with me and have patience for my nervousness as I deliver my remarks. Well, obviously my first thanks and my deepest gratitude goes to the Society for even thinking that I am deserving of this honor. You heard briefly about the two people for whom it is named for, who risked their lives to save others, with one paying the ultimate price. They exemplified individuals who had the compassion to care and the courage to act. They were able to confront evil, and in doing so, they transformed history and the lives of thousands upon thousands of people that they saved. I am definitely not in their league, so I am very awestruck that I have been chosen to receive this award. Really, thank you from the bottom of my heart to the board of the Wallenberg Sugihara Civil Courage Society, Alan, Jan, Vladimir, I'm looking around trying to find you in the audience, Jean, Judith, Karen, and Derek. I would also like to thank the all-party group of MPs I have been working with for believing in this initiative. They were the ones that got the government to pay attention to the plight of Afghan women MPs, whose lives were literally on the line. Without their assistance, I would not be here today in front of you, and none of the Afghan women and their families that we have already brought to Canada would be safe today. My great appreciation to Bloc Québécois MP Alexis Brunel-Duceppe, Conservative MP Alex Ruff, NDP MP Heather McPherson, Liberal MPs Marcus Pawlowski and Leah Taylor-Roy, and Green Party MP Elizabeth May, who you'll have the pleasure of hearing from in a short while. However, let me be clear, this award really belongs to the 69 Afghan women who were MPs when Afghanistan fell to the Taliban, as well as all the other courageous women and girls, journalists, educators, human rights defenders, musicians, athletes, soldiers, and entrepreneurs. By definition, stepping into these roles put them at risk, but their passion and their commitment to their vocations showed their countrymen, and I do mean men here, and the world, that they were integral to the development of Afghanistan. I take pride in the fact that I have assisted a tiny number of Afghan women and girls to find safety in other countries. The Afghan women MPs that we have been working hard to get out of Afghanistan. And also in Victoria, where I live, I have organized private sponsorships for 7 Afghan women who were also at risk and their families. I have also helped many other at-risk Afghans escape to welcoming Western countries. But it is the so very many that I haven't been able to assist that weighs heavily on my heart. There are millions of Afghan women and girls whose lives have been devastated and cut short by the Taliban. During this strange, even surreal, truth is stranger than fiction journey that I have been on for the past 3.5 years, I've been asked many times, why do I do this? Why do I care? Well, as you'll hear in the film, when I first went to Afghanistan 23 years ago, I felt madly, passionately, deeply in love, truly at first sight. But there have been many times in the past 2 decades I wanted to ask for a no-fault divorce because there have been so many obstacles and challenges to this love between myself and Afghanistan. But since Afghan women and girls have not given up on their country, how could I give up on them? But ultimately, it comes down to Tikkun Olam. This is the core of who I am, and it propels me forward every day. For those of you who may not know, Tikkun Olam is the Hebrew phrase that means to repair the world. This is what was instilled in me as a young child, that it is our individual and collective responsibility to do whatever we can to make the world a better place, as cliched and corny as that may sound. I take heart what the son of the Honourable Murray Sinclair, the former senator who chaired Canada's Truth and Reconciliation, quoted at his father's funeral last November. He said, ultimately, no matter how we envision it, change rests with all of us. Here are some other lessons I have learned from this Tikkun Olam journey that I'd like to share with you. Number 1, never ever film the Ministry of Defense in an authoritarian state, even if it was done accidentally. 2, if the doors you knock on slam in your face, and they will, just keep knocking on other doors. One will eventually open, inshallah, but please don't hold me to this. 3, if someone calls you crazy or weird or both, please embrace it as a compliment. No matter how much you try to be sensitive to the needs of others, someone will always find a reason to be mad at you. Number 5, this is because we all carry with us a personal trauma story, whether it's from generations ago or from yesterday. I have learned to appreciate that reactions, either mine or the other person's, generally spring from this well of trauma. Number 6, the American writer Rebecca Solnit says that hope locates itself when we don't know what will happen, and it is in that spaciousness of uncertainty that we can find room to act, either alone or in concert with a few, or even several million others. So I say, lean into the uncertainties, the unknown, and the fear that they bring with it. You never know what Tikkun Olam you may end up getting from it. 7, I have developed a saying that I'm trying to apply to my own life. Compassion goes well with action. Feel free to use this quote, but please remember to acknowledge me as the originator, because it's the only way I'm going to get into Wikipedia. So let me just end by taking a moment to speak to my family members who are here today. My sister Holly and my brother-in-law Thomas. Hey guys, I think I finally found the epitaph for my headstone, so please take note. Here lies Corey Levine. She fully committed to compassion with action. Thank you. extended trailer of a documentary that I have been working on for a couple of years. It is the premiere of this documentary. I made this with a filmmaker, Jeff Sippen, who also happens to be my cousin, so we're keeping it in the family. He's been working around the clock for the last couple of weeks to ensure that it got here on time. And a phrase that I often heard from him was, "I'm editing as fast as I can." That's now been engraved on a nameplate and is making its way to his home in Toronto. So thanks, Jeff, for your patience and your support.
What a film. That was an amazing experience to watch. Okay, we're going to move on with the program and now invite Gulalai Mohammadi to come up. So I'll just say a few words. We are privileged to welcome our speaker. Say a few words more. She was the youngest MP to serve in the Afghan Parliament, encouraged to enter public life by the international community, including Canada. After the Taliban returned to power in 2021, she faced persecution. With help from Corey and Canadian parliamentarians, she and her family finally arrived here in BC. We look forward to hearing your story.
First of all, thank you so much. I have felt again from where I came. It was so hard again to remember those stories. From the outset, I want to express my proud, grave, and sadness over the tragic loss of Mursal Nabizada, a young and a brave parliamentarian who was brutally killed in her home in Kabul, Afghanistan, which was the capital. Her untimely departure is not only a personal loss to those who knew her, but grave reminder of the dangers faced by women leaders in Afghanistan. I pray for her soul and offer my deepest condolences, her family and loved ones. As a young parliamentarian, myself coming from southern Afghanistan, I understand the immense risk and challenges that come with being a woman in politics in our homeland. My own experience in Kabul was fraught with danger, but I am grateful that my family and I are now safe. However, the safety was come with a great cost, as I lost my beloved and young brother during our journey to freedom. A pain that continues to weigh heavily on my heart. Today, I am privileged to have the basic human rights that are denied to Afghan women: education and work, the ability to dream, to achieve. Afghan women in my homeland are banned from education and work, stripped of their fundamental freedoms, while I now live in safety and enjoy these rights. I carry a deep sense of guilt and sadness for those women who remain in Afghanistan, enduring unimaginable suffering. My heart and prayers are with them every day and every moment. This safety would not have been possible without the unwavering support of individuals like Corey Levine. She has been a beacon of hope, working tirelessly to help me and the other Afghan parliamentarians escape to a safer place. Courage, honesty, and selflessness make her a true hero. Kuri, I want to extend my heartfelt congratulations to you on receiving the Wallenberg Sugihara Civil Courage Award. This recognition is so well deserved, and yet I believe it presents only a fraction of the impact you have made in the lives of so many. You inspire us with your strength and dedication to justice and humanity. I also want to extend my special thanks to Canadian parliamentarians who supported us during those dark times, and to Kuri, who not only guided us, but courageously traveled to Afghanistan in those hard situations. She stood with us, taking us from my home early in the morning and helped us cross the border and to Pakistan. The evacuation of MPs, especially female MPs, was an extraordinary challenge. It was not an easy road, and the process was fraught with obstacles. But it was a necessary step to preserve the voices of those fighting for justice, equality, in the future of our country. As one of the youngest members of Afghanistan political generation, I hold on to hope for my nation. I dream of independent Afghanistan, where women have the right to work, the right to speak freely, and where millions of girls can return to their schools and universities to pursue their dreams. Together, we are strong. Together, we can rebuild hope, dignity, and freedom for our people. I am confident that we will achieve the aims and dreams we hold dear. Let us remain united in our efforts, never forgetting the sacrifices of those like Mursal Nabizada who paved the way with their courage. Thank you so much for your attention.
We are very pleased to introduce Elizabeth May, Member of Parliament for Saanich Gulf Islands and Officer of the Order of Canada. As a member of an all-party coalition of Canadian parliamentarians, Elizabeth has advocated for Afghan former MPs and their dealings with Canadian agencies. And I'm going to invite Elizabeth up here.
Corey again. I'm so honored to be here and that Corey would invite me, and that the Wallenberg and Sugihara Civil Courage Society would invite me to also participate today. But I need to again say that the lion's share of the work, as Alex Ruff said in that clip, the work on the ground was all Corey. So when I've been a friend of Corey's for longer than the time of the work for Afghan women MPs, because we come from the same part of southern Vancouver Island, not exactly, I'm in Sydney, she's in Victoria, it's really very far away. But when Afghanistan fell to the Taliban, the shock of it all, and that was August 15th, which was also the day that an election was called in Canada, last one we had, August 15th, 2021. I had been in touch with Corey. I think she'll have to help me with my memory on this, but she was in Kabul, at least it was a year and a half before that day, that horrible day that the Taliban retook Afghanistan. and she contacted me about, I'm working with Afghan women MPs. I'd like to do a Zoom meeting with you and, if we can, Canadian women MPs, and talk about the work, peer-to-peer, of women members of Parliament. At that time, when I was talking to her in Kabul, it was not on either of our minds how fragile the situation was, or the horror that the Taliban could take over and declare war on women again. So, August 15th, if it wasn't exactly August 15th, I think it was actually, but I started getting emails, not just from Corey, but from others, but it was when we realized that we were hearing from Afghan women on the run, former MPs and not MPs, and we were being told, don't communicate about where these women are in hiding because the Taliban is hunting them, and emails can be hacked easily. It's the first time in my life I ever had to find out how to send an encrypted email, and I was sending encrypted emails to the then Minister of Immigration, Marco Mendicino, and saying, we have to get these women to safety. It's a longer story, and it's much more than even we've been able to share with the bits of the film documentary. Gulalai, it's so good to see you. And we have had a journey, and it's not over. I think, Corey, correct me, but is it over 40 former Afghan women MPs who've made it to Canada? What's the total number? It's more than 7.
I don't know the exact number,
Yeah, okay.
but Canada is now hosting the majority per capita of former women MPs.
Okay, so there's been a concerted effort because, of course, as you heard Alex Ruff say in the clip, Canadian government encouraged the growth of a civil society recognition and encouragement to the women of Afghanistan to step up into leadership roles. We had done that in the lead up to and in the time when we were very involved in Afghanistan. I don't know if it's already been said, but Alex Ruff, who's the Conservative member of our group from the riding of Bruce Grey and South, did 2 tours of duty with the Canadian military in Afghanistan. And Canada's role, therefore, is not insignificant, and there were a lot of people left behind who'd worked with Canadian military, Canadian diplomats, been translators, been assistants of all kinds, who were particularly at risk because of that. But when you consider the role of women as members of Parliament in Afghanistan, and when the Taliban took over August 15th, I had no idea that there were so many women Afghan MPs for whom we'd done nothing. It seems to me, and it's a longer discussion, maybe we'll get into it in Q&A, how unprepared immigration was for what you do when there's an emergency. That you don't say, report to a Canadian embassy somewhere for your medical testing and your biometrics. You say, get out now, we've got a plane waiting, get on it. We didn't do that. Anyway, I'm not here to criticize our government, but to say that the effort, exactly as it was described in the film by Liberal Marcus Pulowski and Leah Taylor-Roy and Heather McPherson. Alexei Brunel-Joseph, by the way, if you notice the name Joseph, Alexei Brunel-Joseph is the son of Gilles Joseph. None of us had a single partisan instinct about any of this. And when we organized, the question of when do we go public was our hardest question, because the safety of the women was our biggest concern. At one point in this horror, we knew that even where we'd gotten or helped or knew of, without our help, former women MPs from Afghanistan who were in hiding in Pakistan or known to be in Pakistan, suddenly there was the risk that the Pakistani government might deport them. So then we were completely freaked out, because if you get somebody who's being targeted in Afghanistan by their government, which is now the Taliban, and they're not safely in Pakistan at all, we got to get them out of there before the risk of the Pakistan government deporting them back to Afghanistan. Anyway, it's been a heart-in-your-throat situation for a long time. And when Marcel was murdered, it was the worst, and it was at that moment that all of us as members of Parliament, and how do you work together? Well, it's easy, really. We're all in the same room, and when we see the Minister of Immigration, we're taking him aside. Alex mentioned having talked to Sean Fraser. We worked a lot with Mark Miller, who's still the current Minister of Immigration. Worked really hard to help us. It was, for me, one of the more significant moments in all this was when I actually, so I was thinking about it because it's when I met Corey's cousin, Jeff, who was the filmmaker too. We were all meeting in Toronto because that was the day, September 27th, 2024, that we got Marcel's mother, Shakira, and her two brothers to arrive in Toronto. So although her dear daughter and the boy's dear sister had been murdered, they wanted to come to Canada more than anything, and they'd been dreaming of it. We were able, Corey and Jeff drove Corey and me to Pearson, and I kept thinking, who's this guy Jeff with all this film equipment in the car? And anyway, we're getting, by that point we knew, okay, Corey was coordinating us all, but to wait at the airport, even then, they had the papers to come into Canada, but not real papers. We had sort of the approval of the minister, but it was all quite irregular, and we were waiting for hours and hours for when their plane landed, for when they could clear security and we could see them and hug them and know they were in Canada. And they are part of now a larger Afghanistani community in Canada, former women MPs, but still so many more people left behind. But the welcome, the sponsoring families, the help from everyone is really appreciated. But I can say one thing that's important on the verge of an election when I talk about nonpartisanship. The six of us love each other, and when the film documentary about this was shown on CBC, Adrian Arsenault put together, I know that all of us, whether Liberal, NDP, Green, Bloc, Conservative, all of the five parties, the only public reaction we got was people saying, thank God you people can work together and do some good. We had nothing but positive reaction. And I wish to God we could have the kind of moment where we recognize as people and as human beings that acting like politics is a blood sport and we have to attack each other all the time is not exactly what our constituents want. I know the Afghan women MPs are still hearing from Afghan refugees in Canada where they used to have an MP. They're still turning to their women MPs for help in this country. We need to do everything we can to continue to support all of the women who've come here and the women left behind, and Gulalai, and for all of your colleagues, let them know too that we want to do more, whether it's a shadow government of women Afghan MPs in Canada who could be supported as such, to be given more resources to help take care of constituents who are now far from their first home. And I hope that the new home you have found will love you and take care of you as you have loved and taken care of your constituents. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much.
In London and elsewhere in order to counter the way that the Nazis of Germany had devastated the homelands of so many countries, such as Poland. And I thought it was intriguing to have that idea of a government in exile, and that's perhaps something that you could comment on. I'm going to join the panel by sitting here, but I wanted first to ask about something that I thought about in recent days. Afghanistan has always been at least since the early to mid-1800s, the plaything of imperial powers. If you've done a bit of history, you've probably heard the phrase, the Great Game, when Britain and other imperial powers were involved in the 1800s in attempts at imperial control And then later, from 1979, the invasion of the Soviet Union and the terrible things that followed that Soviet invasion and occupation, which led to the involvement of American and some Western forces supplying native forces there that then became the nucleus of terrorist forces. So I'd like to start by, as I sit down, by asking you about the international dimensions and background of the present state. And then I will, I guess, act as MC to recognize those of you who have a question that you'd like to ask the panel.
Mike's right there. Might need to be switched on, I'm not sure.
Okay. How's that?
Can I answer your question?
Sure.
Is it working now?
We can project.
Let's use this one. The cable.
Thanks. I think there's much, much more we can do. And on the international question, the world is a less stable place by the day, and tomorrow being a particularly important example of unlikely to bring us greater stability. But the illegality under all notions of international law, under the UN Declaration, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, under so many different aspects of what we thought was an accepted norm of international law, what the Taliban does is deeply illegal under international law. The possibility of a parallel government, of supporting Afghan women MPs in being able to provide support, context, continuity is something that came to us when we were talking before going out to the airport, and when I realized they were literally telling me that their constituents still thought they could help somehow. We're having trouble sorting out this issue or that issue, and we began to think about it. I talked to Melody Jolie about it when I got back to Ottawa. Of course, it was relatively easy. Towards the end of September and early October, Parliament was not in the state that it's in now, which is to say, under prorogation. We need to think about what we could do in terms of an international law and a role to establish that we're serious about providing supports. I think it could be done in a nonpartisan way to ensure that Canada stepped up into what we've claimed to have, which is a feminist foreign policy. And how do we actually make that feel real? In terms of how things are going in the world, to your question, I mean, it's the role of Afghanistan in the world right now is ignored, right? The terrors of what happened to women in Afghanistan is almost treated as if it's yesterday's news. But for the people of Afghanistan, I had one weird experience of being a volunteer on behalf of the government of Afghanistan during one of the climate negotiations. It was back, I was just figuring out the year, it was the Warsaw negotiations in 2013. The Afghan delegation was 2 people, and only one of them had a really good grip on English. And they realized there was a Canadian MP who was an expert in climate negotiations, but not allowed on her own country's delegation. That would be me. It's because Stephen Harper was Prime Minister. So I was in the negotiations, but not able to go into the back rooms, which I really liked, because I wasn't there on behalf of my own country. So I just shortened it, just cut to the chase. So I became a member of the Afghan delegation. I was the official note taker, went to all the rooms, and I sent virtually verbatim notes to the head of the delegation. Obviously this was, they wouldn't have been using a woman MP from Canada to be their note taker if the Taliban had been in charge. But I worked really closely with these really lovely couple of diplomats associated with the national parks system in Afghanistan who needed help. And I was therefore the only blonde who went into the special UN room called the Group of 77 in China, which is the entire developing world, where I was there on behalf of Afghanistan. I got a lot of double takes. I had to explain to Ban Ki-moon that I was essentially an environmental refugee, because he looked at my name tag and said, Afghanistan? Oh, but you're from Canada, yeah, but anyway. So there's an international role for Afghanistan post-Taliban regime, and there will be a post-Taliban. But right now, we can't ignore the continued outrage of what's occurring there.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I've heard your story before about being a delegate for Afghanistan, and it just gets better every time. It's such a great story. Wow, you've asked a really rich and complex and complicated question that would need several hours to even begin to try and answer it. But I'm just going to build on what Elizabeth has said. Because I think it addresses how Canada, as great as it has been as a country, we've been one of the most generous countries in the world to bring in refugees. We have several different ways. Not only can people come in as government-assisted refugees, but we have this system of private sponsorship, although the government has been cutting back on that for the past few months, and who knows how much longer this system will be around. But it is still there, hanging in, and it is unique in the world. But the problem is that for me, what Elizabeth remarks highlighted is the fact that we don't do that great of a job of supporting refugees once they come into the country, especially if they're government-assisted refugees. We just, there are services to support them, but not enough given the number. So I had actually organized a meeting with Afghan women MPs who have been brought into the country earlier. And this is what Elizabeth was talking about. So it was really interesting to talk with them who have been already here for 2.5 years, and the struggles that they were facing. There is actually already an organization made up of some of the women Afghan MPs, and they have been playing quite a prominent role. But the problem is the fractiousness that existed in Afghanistan has also traveled here, and you find that often in immigrant and refugee communities. So, and there's not a lot of push to try and address some of this fractiousness. So there are several different women MP groups or Afghan women's leaders groups, and it also depends on what city you're in. And you know, if you can speak English and get the ear of leaders here, and I saw this in Afghanistan as well. So women leaders who didn't speak English or didn't speak the kind of language that the international community was used to, or didn't necessarily have the same views as the international community, they were marginalized. And I'm seeing this, the same thing replicated here. So I think it's an amazing idea to look at creating a government in exile. As I mentioned, at least for the women MPs, the majority of them are, or hopefully will get here to Canada. Some are still stuck after many years. But I think there's a number of issues around Afghan politics that also Afghans themselves need to address, that we are not in a position to play that role, I think. And I think that goes back to your great game question. I mean, Afghanistan was a country that has just been, of interest to great powers around the world, Western and Eastern. There's been a very divide and conquer kind of aspect to Afghanistan that's been going on for hundreds of years, and that's still part of the culture that needs to be addressed. I mean, we face it in Canada. We see the divisions between East and West, and French and English, and urban and rural, etc. And those same kinds of divides exist in Afghanistan as well as in any country, I think. So I'll stop there. I'll pass the...
Gulalai, would you like to respond to any of these points?
Out of your chair.
Oh, yeah, it's all right. Don't worry about it.
Thank you so much for the government of Canada, and especially for the parliamentarians. And I would like that to give more opportunities for the women MPs, especially who are here. And more than 40, I think, they are here in Canada. Most of them there are in Ontario, which I have met them, many of them. But most of them, they are telling that when we came here, all of us were jobless, like we have more problems. But even it's so hard that you have a lot of achievement and you are working for the people and people want help from you, but you cannot do anything with them, for them. I live in Chilwag. Many Afghan are there, like we are very less Afghan families we have there. Even they are asking to help us, but I cannot do anything when I cannot do anything for myself. But what should I do with them? But I'm trying my best to go with them, what else I can do with them, to help with them. So the second thing is English language. It's not our first language, it's our second language. When we came here, it's important for us. It's not only here, everywhere. When we go to every country, we should learn the language. Because it's important, we should learn. So it's so hard for us to learn the language again, to start from the basic, and to look after job and the other things, and to lose all the achievements. So this will be good opportunity for us as well, that the government of Canada to help not only with me. It will be good to help the other girls who are still in Afghanistan, who are still banned from education. It will be more good for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello,
I earlier saw a question
My name is Rick.
from you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mine is kind of a more logistic question to Corey. I'm trying to understand if the Afghanistan government does not allow Afghani women or any people to leave the country to either Pakistan or any other place, and that's on the border is an issue. And if that's the case, how actually did you guys cross the border? Is it forged documents and all that kind of stuff? Thank you.
Okay, the question is the difficulties of crossing the border and to what extent the Taliban would allow people to exit the country.
Similar to Russia, did not allow anyone to leave the country. Is that the same situation? Thank you.
Right. Would you like to handle that?
Sure.
No, it was not like the Soviet. It's not like the Soviet Union where you were actually forbidden by your government to leave. It depends on, you know, the individual person at the borders, or whether they feel, you know, that this person almost isn't relevant to Afghanistan. But, you know, there have been a lot of instances where women have been going by plane to like an international conference, and they were taken off the planes because they said, you don't have any mahrams with you. This is the male relative chaperone. Or if they figure out that the person had a role to play in the previous government, then they're definitely at risk of not being allowed to cross. You asked me how I did it. I'll just say those trade secrets I have to unfortunately keep quiet. But there were a lot of different aspects to it, and every family situation was very different.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess I was in.
I saw another questioner over here, I believe.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and hi to everyone in this room. My name is Kobra Rizai. I am also from Afghanistan. I used to be on the screen always because I was a spokesperson for the Minister of Women Affairs and a spokesperson for the Independent Election Commission of Afghanistan. I'm happy to be here today. Kari, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, if it's wrong, I'm sorry. I really deeply appreciate the great support that you did for Afghan female MPs. It was very critical, it was very essential, and for sure based on the patriarchy, cultural barriers, and financial problems that always women are dependent on the men in Afghanistan, it was so much meaningful and so much was like very, very life-saving program. Also, I guess it's a good time to mention that I have did my master thesis about women's political empowerment in Afghanistan and the impact of quota system, because based on Article 83 in Constitution of former government, we had the reserved seat system for women to bring them more women and make a space for women to be in parties and have a reserved seat. So it's very important, it's very good that we have a very good number of women in parliament and we have a good number of women in leadership and political position. It was very, very important for us to have women in decision-maker position, because without being women in the decision-maker position, it was not possible to consider women issues. And you know that Afghanistan, plus the security and everything, we have a very patriarchal country. It's very men-dominated country, unfortunately, and even men are deciding for women who vote for in the election. I was running for election myself as the youngest candidate in 2009 from Prague province, and I'm originally from Gulalai. Yeah. I was running for election myself, so I know how hard it is for a female to run a campaign and how hard it is for a female to be elected. So congratulations on all good work that you guys have done in Afghanistan and being role model for many women in your local communities, that they were looking at you and they were learning from you and they were getting encouraged from you. So thank you, Kari, thank you so much, everyone who have been behind the scene, and we don't know their name. Thank you to all of them. I deeply appreciate that. I just wanted to raise this. And also, I have a question. Maybe it's not very related, but it is my question. I lost my brother to fight with Taliban too. My youngest brother was killed by Taliban, and I have nephews that they were working in the military organizational bodies, but unfortunately they are in a very bad situation in Iran now. And you know how is the situation for refugees in Iran. They do not have documents, they do not have access to education. So much life, daily problems. I'm wondering, and this is my question, why any government didn't want to take these military guys that they have been in front line to fight with extremism and they were supporting NATO mission in Afghanistan because this guy was a kind of real stakeholder, actual partner with NATO countries to make peace, to defend human rights, and to stand for solidarity, peace, whatever we were talking about that, like NATO mission. This is my question. I don't have any specific individual class. It was in the back of my mind and I wanted to raise it. Again, thank you so much for great work, and I also appreciate that. Oh, I'm sorry, I have to mention that Canada was one of the biggest countries that were supporting girls' education in Afghanistan. Canada was one of the biggest donors who were supporting girls' education in Afghanistan. Thank you, everyone, every taxpayer, everyone who is funded.
Okay, thanks.
تشکر. چطور هستی؟ خوب هستی؟ Yes, you ask a very difficult question, and I don't have really any answer for you except for excuses, which is really sad. First of all, the Canadian government will not, cannot help Afghan refugees living in Iran because we don't have diplomatic relations. So any Afghan refugee in Iran, in order to get any kind of consideration for Canada, would have to go to another country. And this goes back to what Elizabeth was talking about in her remarks, that bureaucracy, especially when it comes to refugees, the red tape is just so mind-blowing. And the other thing about, I have, through private sponsorship, I have assisted, like the husbands of women that I brought to Canada, a few of them have been in the military. So I know the challenges there.
Can I just say, in terms of bureaucracy, we were actually told sometimes this woman's husband can come with her as soon as they get a divorce. Like get back to Corey. Yeah. It's crazy making. Yeah. How each family is different, each woman's life is different. Her sons, her husband, whatever they've done in situations where they may have had no choice in terms of an involvement with the military will create an obstacle.
So what Elizabeth is referring to is one of the women MPs that we were working with. So her husband was rejected because he was a high-ranking officer, had been a high-ranking officer in the Afghan military. And after the after Canada brought in a lot of Syrians in 2015-16, Canada clamped down from experience on bringing in high-ranking military officers. So you're automatically excluded if you're reach a certain rank. Because let's face it, militaries commit human rights abuses. However, I don't think that's the case of your brothers. Canada, I believe, absolutely has abandoned so many of ordinary Afghans who contributed to the development of the country, and there's no reason. So I don't, unfortunately, have an answer for you other than to just keep lobbying the government. Canada has basically now closed its doors to Afghans. And the only way to get any Afghan into Canada is through private sponsorship, and that's even becoming more and more difficult. So I'm really sorry to hear about the situation of your brothers. That's a very long answer just to say I'm sorry, and there is no reason for this other than government bureaucracy.
Pardon? Yeah. Okay.
And politics. Yeah, I believe I saw hands up over here earlier on. Yeah.
Yes, I'm just wondering, what are other Western countries doing on this file? Are they pulling their weight? Western European countries, Australia, New Zealand, France, Germany, England?
So I was, as I mentioned in the film,
We lost the mic. We lost the mic. More than
Okay.
As I mentioned in the film, I've been working to assist Afghans at risk since even before August 15th. And I can tell you that Canada was actually right up there in terms of their willingness to receive Afghans. The U.S. as well has taken in a large number, but most of the other Western countries completely abandoned Afghans who had been even working for them. I spent months and months and months trying to get out an Afghan woman who had been working for a Swedish organization funded by the Swedish government, and they refused to take her in. So that's the kind of example. The UK was terrible. Germany quietly took in a lot, but really they were about the only Western country. Australia's done okay, but their doors have been pretty closed, and I'd say for the past 2 years, pretty much all doors have been closed by Western governments.
So the majority of female Afghani MPs that are exiled are in Canada?
Yes.
So give them a side pocket.
Yeah.
So we're holding our weight down in that regard.
We are, especially per capita, like the size of our population. But, you know, we shut the door 2 years ago, basically. Once the government, you know, announced this vaunted 40,000, and that number was reached like within of those who Canada was accepting was reached within a few months. And I will say something, like I've tried not to, I've been very careful in the remarks that I've said about the government. As Elizabeth knows, I'm trying very hard to be diplomatic. But, you know, the sleights of hand that I witnessed, the government doing sleights of hand in order to say, oh, we've brought in 40,000 has been a little bit mind-boggling.
Hey, can I just ask a question you personally? Because I'm naive about this. When you flew from Dubai to Kabul, and I'm going to assume you're Jewish, you have a Jewish surname, are you putting yourself at great risk to fly to Kabul as a Jewish woman?
Yeah, and we also had a question from somebody else in the audience along those lines. Somebody here asked, Corey, did you also have to deal with Taliban authorities? Did you have to hide the purpose of your trip? Did you have any difficulties in moving around the country as well? Somebody else had asked that.